Hey everybody, the last lap that we did in the Luther 500 series was describing a guy by the name of Augustine, one of the most influential men in the history of our church, who helped clean up some of the false teachings of a dude by the name of Pelagius. If you didn't get a chance to see it, here's a link that you can go to check out that last lap on the Luther 500 series. Hey everybody, we're getting ready to do another lap in the Luther 500 series. For all you NASCAR fans out there, no, we didn't just create a NASCAR race in Columbus, Georgia. Let me tell you what the Luther 500 is. Our church, Calvary Baptist Church, is trying to help understand what it took for us to understand our faith today. We inherited a faith that was delivered to us by many, many great men and women who fought to preserve the clear teachings of the Bible. And this year, in 2017, it celebrates the 500th anniversary of a guy by the name of Martin Luther, who many people use as the reference, the start of the Reformation and how we came to believe what we believe today. So as a church history kind of thing, but also to help us understand our faith, each month we're trying to go back and look at some of those great leaders of the faith that helped hand to us the belief that we have today. And the guy that I want you to hear about today is a man by the name of Anselm of Canterbury. His first name is Anselm. His last name is of Canterbury. No, really, they didn't have last names back in those days. And he pastored and served at the end of his life in what is today the Church of England, in the chapel or the cathedral in Canterbury. So let me tell you a little bit about this guy. He was born in the year 1033. He was born in England. He was a brilliant man. And really, by almost any standard, you could say he was one of the smartest men in the history of the New Testament church. In the last 2,000 years, few men had the kind of genius that Anselm had. Anselm became a passionate follower of Jesus Christ. Anselm became a minister. Back in those days, there was only one church, the Christian church, and Anselm became a monk in the church. He was so brilliant and such an incredible theologian that eventually he was asked to take some leadership responsibilities in the church. During this time, Anselm started to help the church wrestle with the way that they were practicing their faith. It was the popular teaching in Anselm's day that the reason why Jesus went to the cross was to pay back a debt that God owed to Satan. As Anselm studied the Bible, he said, that doesn't look like what I read in the Bible. In fact, when I read the Bible, the reason why Jesus went to the cross in the Bible is really God, or men and women, when we committed sin, we now owed a debt to God, a debt that God has to be paid back. And so Anselm started the discussion about really who got paid for the sins of man when Jesus died on the cross. A lot of people didn't like what Anselm was teaching. Many people thought that Anselm was teaching false teachings because for centuries the church believed it was God wrestling with Satan. But Anselm made the statement, no, God wasn't wrestling with Satan, and Jesus didn't pay back Satan. Jesus ultimately went to the cross to pay off God the Father. You see, our sin was an offense against God. And Anselm's words, Jesus made satisfaction. Jesus made the payment for our sins, and that payment went to God. But Anselm took it a step further, because Anselm believed the Bible teaches that Jesus was God made into the flesh. What Anselm started to teach is God came to earth so that God himself could pay back the debt that man owed. He made this really famous statement that I think every believer needs to hear. Anselm said, no one except God-man can pay the penalty for man's sins. By this sentence, Anselm said, if God doesn't step in and rescue men, men cannot be rescued from sin on their own. And it is only because God was willing to come and to go to earth and to ultimately die in the place of sinful men, that God the Father could be paid back. Anselm was criticized for this discussion. Anselm was ostracized because of this discussion. But Anselm helped the church for 1,000 years to learn something about what really happened when Jesus died on the cross. You see, the popular teaching in Anselm's day was that you could work hard enough, you could pray hard enough, you could be good enough, that eventually God would take your good deeds and He would accept your good deeds as long as they outweighed your bad deeds. And more good deeds than bad deeds would get you into heaven. Anselm made the statement, it's impossible for a person to earn their way into heaven. The reason why we look back at a great man like Anselm is because he made the famous teachings that you and I should believe today. The teachings that it is impossible for a man to work hard enough, pray hard enough, give enough money, or go to church enough to earn their way into heaven. It is only through the death of Jesus Christ, God made into flesh, that men and women can be made right with God and can get to heaven. Anselm's teaching is that you can't earn heaven. Heaven is a gift given freely, but it is given only under the condition of faith. And Anselm fought a battle for our faith. One of the reasons why we're recognizing a great man like Anselm of Canterbury is because he handed what the Bible refers to us as the faith once for all delivered for the saints. The faith that got polluted by the church, and he helped clean up some of that pollution and restore what the Bible clearly teaches about how a man or a woman can be made right with God. We should remember who this great man was and the incredible sacrifice that he made for our faith. Anselm started a movement, and after his death in the year 1109, there were many other scholars of the church who started to listen to and learn from Anselm's teachings. That movement became known as scholasticism. People put real hard thought into their faith, and they believed that you can understand the faith and at the same time act on what you believe. And by acting on what you believe, God blesses a man or a woman's faith. Next time, about a month from now, in the Luther 500 series, we're going to look at a guy by the name of John Wycliffe, one of the most influential people in the New Testament, kind of a guy who helped us receive the Bible the way that we have it today. He was so hated because of what he did for us that after his death, they dug his body up and desecrated his bones because of it. You can't miss the next lap in the Luther 500 series.